Hey everybody, Tony here with my review of Puccini's Tosca with conductor Paolo Arrivabenni, which I saw at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. Before I start my review of Puccini's Tosca at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, I would love to give a huge shout out to Hulkar Sabirova, her husband Christoph, and her friends Wolfgang, Olga, and Anatoly, who were also audience members for tonight's performance. So, Hulkar, Christoph, Wolfgang, Olga, Anatoly, I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for such a wonderful evening, and I wish you all the best in your current and future endeavors. This marks the third time I saw Puccini's Tosca at the Deutsche Oper Berlin because, as much as I would have loved to see Sayoa Hernandez as Tosca, and this was supposed to be her second night of performance in that particular role, she unfortunately fell ill and was replaced by another soprano, Natalya Romaniw. I knew about Natalia Romaniw by complete chance because as I was looking through her repertoire, she specialized in a lot of the lyric soprano roles, specifically Rusalka from Dvorak's Rusalka, Tatiana from Tchaikovsky's Evgeny Onegin, Yolanta from Tchaikovsky's Yolanta, and Mistress Alice Ford from Verdi's Falstaff, and even Blanche de la Force from Poulenc's Le Dialogue du Carmelite, and Mimi from La Bohème. When I found out that she was going to sing Floria Tosca, I had my initial doubts. I was both skeptical in terms of how she was going to fare as Tosca, and also fearful in terms of how she was going to sing this role, let alone fare throughout the entire opera. And as I heard Natalia Romaniw sing the role of Tosca, she did a really good job in terms of what she was able to do with this role. First of all, she was a very committed singing actress who gave it her all in terms of really letting herself in this role. There was not one moment where she backed down theatrically, and she was able to give a very stirring performance of Vici d'arte that also had some fine pianissimi singing, and she also had really good chest tones that she was able to take advantage of, especially in some of the more emotional moments. And when she sang those chest tones and dug deep into them, she did a laudable job in doing so. Aside from her chest tones, her voice had an overall pleasing quality to it, as she has been specializing in a lot of the lyric soprano roles throughout her career. I do like the plushness that was present in her voice, although it came at a price in terms of her overly fluttery and caprino-like vibrato, which tended to be kind of peevish at worst. But other than that, Natalia Romaniw had a fine instrument that she was able to take advantage of in terms of conveying the necessary emotions of Tosca, regardless of what moment she is in. Unfortunately, there were some high notes that ended up being thinly sung, such as her high C in the second act. But she did gradually build up on her high notes, and I thought that her high C in the third act was a lot better. Nevertheless, her top notes are not ones that I would go crazy for, because whenever I think of sopranos singing those top notes in Tosca, as well as combining those said top notes with gorgeously deep chest tones, I would think of singers such as Maria Caniglia, Maria Callas, Maria Yaritsa, and even my personal favorite, Leonie Rizanek, whose top notes were some of the most glorious I have ever heard as Floria Tosca. The thing I've noticed about Natalia Romaniv's top notes as Tosca was that they did not have that Jinsu, let alone that katana-like quality where it just cuts through the orchestra. They didn't really excite me, but at least she had them, although the top notes did miss the mark in terms of thrilling incisiveness, which is always something I would love to look forward to for any soprano singing Tosca. Despite the issues I had with Natalya Romaniw as Tosca, I thought she was a very committed and dedicated performer who gave it her all in this role, who was able to really sing Visidarte, her show-stopping aria, with sufficient vulnerability and pain to the point where I really felt for Tosca at that moment after Scarpia and his goonies were torturing poor Cavaradossi. So I could never overlook the assets that Natalya Romaniw brought to Tosca. But there is that one condition that I have for Miss Romaniw in terms of preserving her voice. She has a naturally fine lyric soprano instrument, and I would love to keep on hearing her continue to develop those chest tones and have better coordination with her voice, because she does have great material to work with. It's just that I hope that she does not give in to the temptation of sacrificing her naturally beautiful lyric soprano voice in favor of a much heavier repertoire, thus damaging it. Because, as I stated before, Natalya Romaniw's lyric soprano voice is one that I would love to keep on hearing for the duration. And I do not want to hear her abuse her naturally beautiful lyric soprano voice with heavier roles. So here's hoping that Miss Romaniw will continue to be conscientious and cognizant with the choices of roles that she is singing, because she does have a nice future as a full lyric soprano, not only singing the likes of Tatiana, Yolanta, Rusalka, and Mistress Alice Ford, but I also love to hear her in roles such as Countess Almaviva from Marriage of Figaro, Donna Elvira from Don Giovanni, and maybe even Fidelia from Edgar and Liu from Turandot. Those are roles I feel are a lot more suitable for her lyric soprano voice. But that is not to discredit her performance as Tosca, as she was a laudable performer who was committed and who was dedicated to make this role come to life, all thanks to her natural lyric soprano voice that, while had issues in terms of her top notes, specifically her high C, her overall dedication and commitment as an artist remained unparalleled, and she was someone that I will continue to root for every time I see her on stage, because she does have good material, and I also hope that she remains on the international stages for many years to come. Her Cavaradossi for the evening was Jonathan Tetelman, and I have heard a lot of wonderful things about this particular full lyric tenor. And speaking of full lyric tenor, this is a tenor who has sung the likes of Alfredo from La Traviata, Rodolfo from La Bohème, and even heavier roles such as Cavaradossi from, of course, Puccini's Tosca. And he has been gaining a lot of acclaim, not only for his voice, but also for his performance. And I could definitely see why, as well as hear why he acquired that acclaim. First of all, he had such a magnetic stage presence to the point where I was completely hooked with his performance from beginning to end. From the very first moment of the opera up until his death, I totally rooted for Mr. Tettleman as Cavaradossi. His greatest asset was his top notes, which he managed to make them ring throughout the theater and have that particular brilliance and blazing quality that I love in many a tenor who sing Cavaradossi. And his chest notes were well sung too. So he was an overall complete performer whose vocal and theatrical prowess I was completely hooked on and was completely rooting for him from beginning to end because he does have a naturally beautiful and exciting instrument. Yes, there were occasions in which he sang in the mask and then he sounded quite nasal, but when he didn't sound nasal, he had a glorious instrument that was exciting for someone who I'd usually associate in the full lyric tenor repertoire. This is yet another singer I would love to continue seeing on the world's opera stages because he does have a naturally beautiful and exciting instrument. He does have a good technique. It's just that I really do hope that he not only stays wise with his choice of roles and not take on too heavy roles such as Radames from Aida, let alone something like Kala from Turandot, because Jonathan Tetelman is a naturally fine and beautiful full lyric tenor who I would love to keep on seeing grow with fruition and beauty. And while there have been other greater tenors who have been much better in the role of Cavaradossi, such as Beniamino Gigli, Enrico Caruso, Mario del Monaco, Franco Corelli, Giovanni Martinelli, Giovanni Zenatello, and even Giacomo Lauri Volpi, my personal favorite Cavaradossi, and of course my personal favorite tenor of all time, Jonathan Tetelman was definitely in a class of his own and was a trooper through and through. And although I would usually associate him in roles such as Rodolfo, Alfredo, and even the likes of Nadir from Le Pêcheur de Perles, and even Péléas from Péléas et Mélisande, Jonathan Tetelman does have a fine instrument that has loads, let alone bundles, of potential to keep on growing in the right way and even hear his voice grow magnificently and in the right direction. Because Jonathan Tetelman is a fine full lyric tenor whose star I do not want to see fade anytime soon, and a star that I would love to see keep on shining in all the world's opera stages. Then there's Roman Burdenko as Baron Vitellio Scarpia, and I was quite curious to see how this baritone was going to sound like in this particular villain role. And Mr. Burdenko did not disappoint whatsoever. Yes, he did have a barky start in his entrance, but he got better throughout the opera and naturally sang his role with a lot of pathos, virility, and also imbued Scarpia with that sleaziness, that volcanic lust, and his penchant of abusing his power as a politician. Now that was definitely an exciting portrayal that Roman Burdenko gave as Baron Scarpia. Although I will always root for other greater interpreters of the role, such as Gino Becchi, Lawrence Tibbett, George London, Tito Gobbi, Gian Giacomo Guelfi, Theo Adam, and Hans Hotta, Roman Burdenko did a fine job with what he was able to accomplish as Baron Scarpia. First of all, I loved the color of his voice. It had that sufficiently dark and virile quality that I love in many a baritone singing Scarpia, let alone roles such as Rigoletto, Conte di Luna, and basically roles composed by Verdi and Puccini. There is both that virility in his voice as well as that snarling quality that made Scarpia come to life as a character. And I do hope that Roman Burdenko continues to grow as a baritone because he does have awesome material to work with. For someone like him who started out in lyrical roles such as Belcore from L'Elisir d'Amore and is continuing to sing in all of these dramatic baritone roles, here's hoping that I continue to see him grow and flourish in everything that he sings in, because there is a lot of material that he's been working with. There is a lot of versatility with his repertoire, and his voice tonight showed it. He was able to not only sing the role with power and with that snarling quality, but he also had some moments of nobility. thus making Roman Burdenko's portrayal of Scarpia quite a treat to listen to as well as witness on stage. There was some equally fine singing to be found in Tyler Zimmerman as Cesare Angelotti in terms of his bass baritone voice being put to fine use to make this thankless character come to life in his exhaustion, desperation, and how much he wants out of the current circumstance that he is in, especially that he is in pursuit of Scarpia, although I will still hold Carlo Cava as one of my most favorite interpreters of Cesare Angelotti of all time. But I still have to give props to Tyler Zimmerman for singing and acting the role well. And I dare not forget about Patrick Rowan as the sacristan, who also made great use of his bass baritone voice to make this comic character come to life. Although I will still hold the likes of Fernando Corena and Italo Tayo close to my heart as also my personal favorite interpreters of the sacristan, but at least what Patrick Rowan accomplished as the sacristan was beautifully done thanks to his sufficiently rich and well-tuned bass baritone voice. But the one who really stole the show was Patrick Getty as Sharonne, whose strong and powerful basso cantante voice brought this otherwise thankless character to life, and he managed to make him so menacing and absolutely scary that I was at the edge of my seat when he opened his mouth to sing Sharonne's few lines. Equally as fine was Jörg Schörner as a characterful Spoletta, as well as Artur Garbas making fine use of the jailer's lines, and I would love to hear him develop his voice in the best way possible because there is a fine baritone voice in Artur Garbas, and I would definitely love to hear him grow in richness and in depth. And finally, I have to give some kudos to Nathalie Zint for what she was able to accomplish as the shepherd boy. So when it comes to the three main leads of Floria Tosca, Mario Cavaradossi, and Baron Vitellio Scarpia, I have to give a lot of props to Natalya Romaniw, Jonathan Tetelman, and Roman Burdenko for being such major troopers in these roles, especially Jonathan Tetelman, who was able to make great use of his beautiful full lyric tenor voice and make his voice ring throughout the theater, especially where his blazing top notes were concerned. And here's also hoping that he continues to develop his technique in the right way and, of course, continue to give fine performance after fine performance in everything he's in. And major props also has to go to Natalya Romaniw for what she was able to accomplish as Tosca, as she too was a trooper from beginning to end, making sufficient use of her lyric soprano voice to emit frailty and fragility as well as vulnerability in her show-stopping aria Visi d'arte. And finally, Roman Burdenko for bringing menace and sleaziness as Scarpia. And I cannot forget about the superb efforts accomplished by Tyler Zimmerman as Cesare Angelotti, Patrick Rowan as the sacristan, Patrick Getty as Sharonne, Jörg Schörner as Spoletta, Artur Garbas as the jailer, and Nathalie Zint as the shepherd boy. They were able to do laudable jobs in their respective roles, and I salute each and every one of them for what they were able to accomplish. And the conducting done by Paolo Arrivabene was really solid all around. Yes, the beginning was quite sluggish, but he got better as the evening went on. And what I noticed about his conducting of Tosca was that he was able to tease in some moments from certain instruments, whether they be from the strings or from the woodwinds or even from the brass. There was not one moment where he skimped out on, And of course, the chorus and orchestra of the Deutsche Oper Berlin are always reliable and always professionals at everything they do. So overall, Natalia Romaniw might have given a sufficiently laudable performance as Tosca, given how much she was able to imbue this role with not only vulnerability in her show-stopping aria Visidarte, as well as sufficient performing strength throughout the entire evening, unless they forget about Roman Burdenko's sleazy yet virile Scarpia. But even with the acclaim I can give to Miss Romaniw and Mr. Burdenko, it was ultimately Jonathan Tetelman who stole the show as Mario Cavaradossi. But I still have to give kudos to Natalia Romaniw for stepping in for Sayoa Hernandez as Tosca, and what she was able to deliver tonight was nothing short of fine and laudable. But ultimately, it was Jonathan Tetelman who stood above the rest as a sterling performer who was able to give it his all as Mario Cavaradossi. And for those of you who caught Puccini's Tosca at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, what'd you think of it? Did you feel that Natalia Romaniw, Jonathan Tetelman, and Roman Burdenko were excellent in their respective roles of Tosca, Cavaradossi, and Scarpia? Was there a singer who stole their thunder, especially in the minor roles? Or did you feel that the singing was not to your liking? Comment below and let me know. Well, that's it for my review of Puccini's Tosca at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, starring Natalia Romaniw as Tosca, Jonathan Tetelman as Cavaradossi, and Roman Burdenko as Scarpia. Tune in tomorrow for my review of Erich Wolfgang Korngold's Das Wunder der Helene, also at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. So until then, good night, everybody.